First of all, then, just your reaction to news in the last couple of minutes that President Putin has sent condolences to the family of Yevgeny Prigozhin. This feels like the kind of official confirmation that we were really waiting for of his death.
Well, certainly it is that, and also typical hypocrisy on the part of Vladimir Putin, expressing his condolences to his family after he's very likely responsible for killing him. U.S. officials here in the Pentagon certainly believe, and I'm assuming they have some evidence of it, if a missile raises its head someplace in the world, given the satellite coverage that the United States has, we can detect that missile. So I'm assuming we have some information that it was a missile attack, and coming from their S-300s or S-400s that are in the vicinity of Moscow, that means they're under control of their military, and they wouldn't wantonly fire at a plane approaching Moscow unless they had some orders to do something like that. So, I mean, it's obvious. I think the world knows what happened here. Putin bided his time, and he sought his revenge, as we expected him to, for the most serious threat against him in his 23 years in power, when Prigozhin put his troops and tanks on the road and shot down multiple aircraft belonging to the Russian military, while he claimed he had no intention to depose the regime or conduct an assault on Moscow. The evidence is that it was a mutiny, and that was not deniable. And certainly, Putin's going to take some action. He had to take some action because, in the world that he lives in, as a thug and a killer, and being a strong man, he was criticized severely for tolerating Prigozhin's criticism for 18 months of the prosecution of the war, and then conducting a deal with someone who was conducting a mutiny against him. So Putin got criticism on the one hand for not doing something about Prigozhin beforehand, and number two, for letting him wave a white flag at the end there and work out some kind of negotiated settlement. So this is more in the line of where Putin really is, and that is stamping down any opposition to him since he's been in power for 23 years.
Yeah. Indeed, just to pick up on what you were saying there, Jack, Joe Biden suggested that Putin ordered the assassination. So, I mean, it seems like it's one of those situations where, as you say, everyone's pretty much aware of what seems to have happened here. What does the aftermath look like in your analysis then? Putin sending his condolences in the last couple of minutes to Prigozhin's family. What of these seemingly unsettled Wagner mercenaries?
Well, a couple of things. I think it certainly sends a message that he's very much in power, and he's not going to tolerate that power being threatened. Secondly, I do believe, because the Wagner group has had some success in Africa, lesser so in Syria, that he's likely going to continue the mercenary group. Whether he keeps the same name or not remains to be seen. But certainly, one thing for sure will happen. The sort of semi-independence that Prigozhin took license with through the years, that is over. And I believe the mercenary Wagner group, and there are other private firms like that, not as notable as Wagner certainly, will be somewhat really under the control of Russia, and they will not tolerate that kind of independence going forward. But I think they will still use them as an extension of their foreign policy, particularly in Africa, because they've enjoyed some success with it.
What then of the security situation for Ukraine as well? I'm just so aware that there is so much focus right now on Russia, and understandably so, given the events of the last 24 hours. But we mustn't forget that the war is ongoing. Do objectives on Russia's part change?
No, I don't think so. Russia obviously is conducting a prepared defense to stop the Ukrainian counteroffensive that's taking place, and they put a lot of effort into all of that. They've tried to attempt some minor offensive themselves, and they failed miserably. The Ukrainians have achieved some tactical success because they've broken through for the first time the main defenses of the Russian defense in depth, so in a town vicinity of Robotina, and that is significant because it's the first time they've ever achieved that. They have to still continue against secondary defenses and then use uncommitted forces to exploit that success. All that remains to be seen how successful they be. This will be tough. It'll be slow going. And they're very careful about preserving their force. But this is an achievement, and it's being overshadowed certainly by other events that are taking place here. And the Ukrainians have done this remarkably so, Callum, with only 60 of the 250 Leopard tanks that they were promised to get, with only 15% of the promised engineer equipment to get through the minefields and get through the other obstacles. So they waited and waited and waited, and they realized they had to finally move if they were going to take advantage of the summer weather before the transition rain comes in October, despite not having all the equipment they have. And I'm a little frustrated with American military officers in the United States who are criticizing their tactics when they have shortchanged them on their capabilities. And let's face it, for those who think they know how to fight this war, speaking from America's perspective, Callum, we haven't been in a combined arms conventional conflict since the end of since World War II in 1944. What we did in Desert Storm and also in Iraqi Freedom in 2003, that was not against a prepared defense. And it was relatively easy for us to do that with the support of air power. The Ukrainians have no air defense doing this, and they have no air power doing it, and yet they're achieving some success. I think the critics should just sit back and provide them the support they need as opposed to providing them criticism.
Yeah. And just a final one for you, Jack. Is the world more or less secure without Yevgeny Prigozhin in it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Prigozhin is a reflection of Putin. He's a brutal thug and killer. And his forces rape women routinely. They torture men when they capture them. And then they kill their own people if they are not willing to go into the fight because they believe that continuing the fight against something that's completely hopeless makes no sense whatsoever. This is a murderer in every sense of the word who is morally corrupt, and the world's better off without him.